Question number 12, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Does he stand by his statement that, quotes, the government is comfortable with the process that was followed in relation to the Agrihub? If so, did his department follow all government rules during the development and procurement of the $6 million Agrihub?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Tim Gross.
On behalf of the Minister, yes, and we welcome the announcement by the Auditor-General that she will look into the Saudi Food Security Partnership and the Agrihub project.
Supplementary.
A supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Is he aware that Rule 21 of the Government Procurement Rules states, and I quote, an agency should not purchase procurement advice from a supplier that has a commercial interest in the contract opportunity because to do so would prejudice fair competition, end quote.
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, I'm sure the Auditor-General will look into all relevant aspects of the issue.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
I seek a ruling from you, sir. The existence of an inquiry from the Auditor-General does not absolve the Minister from their responsibility to answer questions in this House.
And I agree with the member. I think the best way forward in the first instance is for the member to have the opportunity to repeat the question for the benefit of the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable David Parker.
Is he aware that Rule 21 of the Government Procurement Rules states, and I quote, an agency should not purchase procurement advice from a supplier that has a commercial interest in the contract opportunity because to do so would prejudice fair competition, end quote.
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
Well, on behalf of the Minister, Mr. Speaker, the Government is very happy to answer all parliamentary questions on this, but on the specifics of this case, we will be biding our time and waiting until the Auditor-General has produced a report, and then we will talk further.
Order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
I suggest, sir, that answer is out of order. He does have a responsibility to Parliament. I didn't ask anything about the Auditor-General's inquiry.
Again, the way forward, because the question to me has no relevance to the inquiry. The question is a simple question about aware of rules regarding and advice around government procurement. If the question can be asked again, we'll take it after that to see where the answer gets to. So the Honourable David Parker.
Sir, is that using up another sup?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's order. Order, so I'm clear. It's a chance for the Minister. Order. Just so I'm clear, it's a chance for the member to repeat the question for the benefit of the Minister, because I'm not sure that he's actually understanding the question.
Thank you, Mr.
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, the Honourable David Parker.
Is he aware that Rule 21 of the Government Procurement Rules states, and I quote, an agency should not purchase procurement advice from a supplier that has a commercial interest in the contract opportunity because to do so would prejudice fair competition, end quote.
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
On behalf of the Minister, I'm sure the Minister is aware of the rule. The relevance of this to this case may well be a matter for the Auditor-General to look into.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Why then was Brown Rig Agriculture paid to provide advice on the so-called business case and paid by his department to travel to Saudi Arabia as part of a team developing the business case and was then awarded the contract?
The
Speaker.
Honourable Tim Grosser.
Mr. Speaker, this aspect of this issue has been gone into in excruciating detail in questions and answers prior to this matter has been conducted by a group of officials through a competitive process, and I am quite confident, Mr. Speaker, that the Auditor-General will be able to satisfy everybody on this when she completes her report.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
I seek leave to table the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade document dated the 15th of March 2013 showing that Brown Rig Agriculture were paid to provide that advice.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is none. It can be tabled.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Is he aware that Cabinet agreed to the $6 million investment subject to strict conformity with government procurement rules? And if so, does he think Cabinet directives should be followed all of the time or just some of the time?
The Honourable Tim Grosser.
On behalf of the Minister, I'm sure, believes that Cabinet directives should be followed all of the time.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
I seek leave to table the Cabinet Minute of 18 February 2013 that says, quotes, the $6 million will be undertaken in strict conformity with government procurement requirements.
Can I just clarify with the member, has that document not already been tabled in this House?
No, I haven't tabled it,
Okay.
sir.
On the basis that, okay, it's a Cabinet Minute, leave us sought to table it. Is there any objection? There is none. It can be tabled.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable David Parker.
Is he aware that his officials told the Auditor-General, this is not part of the inquiry, sir, this is earlier statements, quotes, that some of the information gaps in the draft indicative business case are to be picked up in the procurement and contracting phase of the project? And if so, why did his officials not proceed with that second phase of the procurement process and instead just gave the contract to Brownrigg Agriculture?
The Honourable Tim
On behalf
Rosa.
of the Minister, in response to the first part of the question, yes.
We move to questions to members, and question number 1 in the name of